Hello and welcome to The Right Idea, where we discuss the people, policy, and politics that drive Texas. I'm your host, Brian Phillips. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And with me, as always, every week, our Chief of Research, Derek Cohen. Derek, I'm probably going to ask you this question every single week, but you tired yet? You tired? You getting any sleep now? We're 2 weeks into session, and all I hear is that, it's just going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest with you, it was, and then it broke for almost a week. Obviously, we had the weather event earlier this week. They gavelled in a little bit today. Today's Wednesday. They gavelled in a little bit, gavelled out, and I think we're gonna get back to basically full throttle tomorrow when we see a rules debate in the House.
And things are getting spicy. I don't know if the bills are out yet, but certainly the fact sheets on the budgets, both the House and the Senate budget, the fact sheets have now been put out, and there's some fun stuff on there.
Yeah, and one thing I'll be the first. There's a lot of overlap there, a lot more overlap than we may have seen years in the past.
Wait, are the House and the Senate talking to each other?
I wouldn't know why you'd put that out there in this universe. Let's just take them as they come, and knock on wood that may the good times forever continue.
All right. Well, we always like to start with something fun here at The Right Idea. So our hot take of the week, as everybody saw, the Village People performed live at Trump's inaugural. So Derek, I'll ask you, if you were president, who would be a band that no one would expect to headline your inauguration party?
Wow. And the Village People's already been taken.
Yeah, you can't double up. I mean, then you're just a Trump bootlicker at that point.
It's derivative.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a good question. Oh my goodness, I wish I had more time to think about it. That's a good question. I would probably say, and they still have to be together.
No, well, I mean, they come back together for the inaugural, of course. That would be the big surprise.
So Captain Tennille is that? No, I'd have to say probably Welsh industrial rock band Funeral for a Friend. Which you're thinking like, didn't they have one song like in the early 2000s?
I don't even know that they had one song.
Two songs in the early 2000s, I'll have you know. And they had like 2 CDs, and then did a CD of combining those 2 CDs, and yeah, that was about it. No, that was definitely a one from my past. It would have sentimental value, and then failing that, I'm sure we could have to pay homage to the Toledo, Ohio roots and have something like Insane Clown Posse or something like that.
So it'd be a 2-day. It'd be a 2-day extravaganza.
Hey, look, if I'm getting inaugurated, you want to have a music festival in my honor? I'm not going to tell you no.
I would probably go with something that I'm not embarrassed to say is I really like yacht rock. So maybe like
that is the least surprising thing.
Is that least surprising? I would like a yacht rock themed cover band or something like that.
There's a lot of Steve Winwood is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, Hall & Oates and Kenny Loggins and getting after it.
Wait, are we talking Danny Song Loggins or Danger Zone Loggins?
Definitely Danger Zone.
Oh, okay.
The post, not the early stuff where he was writing all the Doobie Brothers songs, like the stuff later, much later. All right, well, let's get to the reason why we're all here, which is the shameless plug. We do a lot of things here at TPPF, and I like to talk about them at the beginning. The one thing that you all should know about, I always kind of plug our newsletters and things like that, but our biggest event of the year is our annual policy summit. So go to TexasPolicySummit.com and you can register there. I believe we still have some openings that you can attend in person. It's here in Austin at the end of February. But even if you can't attend, we live stream everything. So all of the keynote speakers, all of the panels, everything is all completely live streamed, so you can watch it there. And just in case, because I know you're all super busy, we also record everything and post everything to our website. So in case you missed a panel or you heard about it or you're the media and you're trying to cover 4 different things at the same time, we post everything usually within about 24 hours. So go to TexasPolicySummit.com. You can register there. I believe most of at least the panel subjects are online. I don't know if we've confirmed and gotten all of the list of people who are going to be there, but we have confirmed our keynotes. None other than Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and Senator Cruz are going to be our keynotes this year. And maybe some surprises now that some shoes have dropped. You never know. Maybe some surprises after
You're saying the Insane Clown Posse will be there.
Actually, it'd be Insane Clown Posse doing yacht rock covers.
I've never wanted something more in my life.
All right, let's move on to the reason why we're all here, and that's to talk to our guest, who's got a lot of information that everybody's asking about. That's one of the reasons why I asked you to be here. Selene Rodriguez is the campaign director for our Secure and Sovereign Texas campaign. At TPPF, the Secure and Sovereign Texas campaign does all of our border security and immigration work. Prior to this position, Rodriguez served in the Marine Corps.
Hoorah.
Okay. As an intelligence officer, born and raised in Del Rio, Texas, Rodriguez graduated from Texas State University, go Bobcats, with a BA and an MA in political science. Selene, is this your second time on the show?
Second time.
Excellent.
And I still have no idea what you guys are talking about with your music interests.
Well, then we ask you. Let's say you're the first female president. It's a big deal, right? You're gonna be you're gonna have your inaugural. Who's gonna be your band that shows up?
If no one expects it, Metallica. Look,
All right,
I'm
that'll
sure
work.
I wear a lot of pink. I wear a lot of cheetah print. You expect, like, I don't know, a Miley Cyrus character. But then Metallica comes out screaming, "Don't tread on me."
I love
Nobody
it.
sees that coming.
I love it. That might, but you could have that be like your campaign song. Like that would be, you could start out that way.
Great. You're my new campaign manager. Thank
Great,
you.
great 4-year tone set.
All right. Well, let's get into it. As I mentioned, Selene is a border security expert, and everybody is talking about border security over the last 48 hours because the number one issue for the campaign, the number one issue for Donald Trump, the number one issue for the country and Texas has been border security over the last 4 years. And he came out hard in the paint, as they say, and he released dozens of executive orders, but most of them, I think half of them practically, were on border security. So we're going to go over a few of those. But just in general, Selene, what did you think about the flurry? I mean, were you just busy as all get out?
I was so excited. I was telling my husband, I used to hate getting on X. Like, it was doom and gloom. Okay, do we even have to get on today? We already know everything's horrible. I'm so excited. I'm spending most of my time on X now because just new and exciting things keep happening. And I'm trying to keep up with all of it, but it's almost impossible. But 10 strong executive orders, first and foremost, prioritize it, securing our borders, securing our communities. I cannot wait to get to work on all of this.
So the biggest one, I think maybe you would agree, is designating Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Am I right?
Yep.
Tell us about that and what that means for the
So the foundation has obviously led the way on the work as far as why cartels do qualify as FTOs, foreign terror organizations, why we should designate them as such. I'm really proud to have been a part of this effort here with this team. But not only that, there was two surrounding that. One, we designated them as foreign terror organizations. And then second, there's a mandate that the Department of Defense has to use troops, personnel, resources, and equipment to secure the southern border. You can't get out of it anymore. We can't just use them for the purposes of state effort. The federal government has to use the Department of Defense to secure the nation. Sounds pretty common sense, but now we have an EO officially stating that, and it is a huge move, especially as far as U.S.-Mexico relations. But this FTO designation is long overdue. We are so grateful it's finally here, and what this does is this allows us to go more strongly after Mexican cartels and those who they work with. So for the past however many years, I don't remember exactly when this happened, but we have the Kingpin Act. So you can target cartel heads under the Kingpin Act. That's kind of easy to do when it's all said and done, but they're such a wide and such a big organization that operate not just in Mexico, but in Latin America and the United States and even abroad in other countries. So that needed a lot of strengthening there. Now we can go after anybody who works with the cartels in any sense. So the people selling drugs on a corner, the people moving anything for them. This gives us a wide range of options that we desperately need to actually win the war against Mexican cartels.
Now, not to get too in the weeds here, but right off the bat, but what does that mean operationally for the United States? I mean, could we potentially be sending in military? You're talking about the people on the corner.
Yeah.
Well, that's the corner in Mexico. So are we going to be able to run operations at that level where we're actually acting and taking action in Mexico?
Interestingly enough, that was one of the first questions that President Trump received from the press when he was signing these EOs. I don't know who it was, but they said, so are you saying you could use U.S. Special Forces in Mexico? And he said, well, stranger things have happened. What? Where is the President Trump of 4 years ago? I mean, this guy's not playing around. He's actually very serious about doing what it takes to defeat our enemy to the south. And that's the key thing here. They are our neighbor, right? The Mexican cartels, they are not just in Mexico anymore. They're in our own communities, and they have entrenched themselves in every major city, in every state in this country. We have to be able to go after them more efficiently. So operationally, not only are we targeting them here, we can also target them in Mexico. We can target people who we know are working with them, including members of the Mexican government, which we know, and we've been documenting how that's been happening. And we can we can go against that in Mexico. How that will look is yet to be determined, but we do know that the order said they have 10 days to have a plan on what they're going to do. We're already seeing troop movement as of this morning, so I'm really eager to see what all that is going to look like.
I'm just surprised to see the president talking to the press. Yeah, I was under the impression in the last 4 years that was completely impossible.
I think he even told them to like shut up and wait their turn.
And he was going to get to every single one of them.
Yeah. I'd say he was right. Stranger things have happened, I guess. I do want to ask though, because we do see. Look, if we have President Trump's signature on a document already in one of those big folio things, debate's settled on this. However, we still see some folks pushing back, saying, "Oh, this isn't the way to go about it." We might be, we might be taking 2 steps back for 1 step forward. What is the pushback from the policy perspective? What is the pushback on this? Because I was actually, surprised to see, what little of it there is, but I was still surprised to see it because it seemed like such a common sense move.
Yeah, no, it is very common sense. So there's a few arguments that people have against an FTO designation. Thankfully, like you said, we won that argument, but it's still important that we clear up. Those are not problems that we're really going to be facing in the way that you think we are. One, some people have said, well, this will mean more asylum claims that we'll have to deal with from Mexico because now people will say, well, we live under a foreign terrorist organization, so we qualify for asylum. We have research that says historically that has not been the case for people coming from countries of which we have designated an FTO in that nation. Additionally, it's estimated right now the cartels operationally control under 50% of Mexican territory, so you can still relocate somewhere within Mexico that is generally safer than where you might be that is under cartel control. That's one argument. Another one is the reallocation of our resources, specifically from DOD to Mexico, to our next door neighbor. Okay, where's the closest threat, right? It's right next door and it's in our own homes. I think we should definitely prioritize that first and foremost. Like you said, common sense. And a lot of people think, well, what about our war on radical Islam, right? The terrorism in the Middle East and the fight in the Middle East. Okay, one, we do have elements of that problem in Mexico. You have Chinese influence, you have Russian influence, Iranian influence in Mexico and in all Latin American countries. So the fight is here, and we already have a Department of Defense. We have the resources. We have the things that we need to keep this nation secure. Use them and use them appropriately. And right now, that is in the problem that's already in all of our communities, and that's the Mexican cartels.
And that's, I wanted to segue into that because a lot of people would say, look, I totally get wanting to go over there and attack the cartels, in their homes and where they are. But we have a huge problem, thank you very much, Joe Biden, that's totally metastasized over the last 4 years. What are we doing about, the Chinese presence here? What are we doing about the Russian presence here? There was that mercenary that got caught at the border with a drone and, $5,000 in his hands and 2 guns. So there's that presence here. You've got obviously the gangs and the Tren de Aragua is taking over buildings and all of that. So a lot of people will be saying, look, that's great and all that this would give us new powers to go attack in Mexico, but what are we doing about the threats that are already right here under our nose?
Well, a couple of things. One, it's not just the power to target those within Mexico, it's also the power to target them within here, those corner boys that are here. More often than not, when you look at who the supplier is of most of the corner street drugs that people are purchasing here in the United States, it goes all the way back to the Mexican cartels, which goes all the way back to China. This is a deep, organized network that has been taken all of these years to get it where it is now. It's not going to be easy to go after it, but now we have the tools to go after it. Another thing we're seeing is the deportation plan, which is just normal, sensible immigration policy,
mass
right?
deportation.
Yeah, this isn't anything like new and crazy and, oh my gosh, the United States have never done this before. No, deportation has always been a part of our immigration policy.
Especially of criminals.
Especially with criminals. And who doesn't like the thought of removing criminals from your own communities? So, you have the new tools for prosecutors, for DAs, for law enforcement to go after that. But of most note, I want to say a key element that states are going to be implementing now with the new administration to empower them to do so is 287G program agreements. So 287G is a program under ICE where you enter into this memorandum of understanding with ICE and they train you, they give you the resources and the tools, and specific agents within a law enforcement agency will be able to enforce immigration law, working with ICE to do so. Now, every memorandum of understanding or agreement is going to be different according to what you enter into. How that looks is different, varying by state and community. But that will be a key element. Texas has a few bills filed. A few more are going to be filed. Other states are calling special sessions to see how they can enact these policies in their own states. And it was also part of one of the executive orders that Trump signed. So that's going to be really big, empowering states to go after that.
Well, you asked the question, who doesn't support deportation? Well, I have the answer. It's 29%, just 29% of the American people don't support mass deportation. It's over 60% that do support it, which is the largest number it's been in a long time, which just tells you really how far that issue has come, because the left has always used it to demonize our position on border security. And now you've got 65% of the people that support it. But I do want to segue into something that you helpfully talked about at the end of your answer, which is the effort from Texas. I mean, for the last 4 years, we have been taking arrows in the front and knives in the back on this issue constantly. Every time, we're getting it's bad enough we're getting no help from the federal government, but then when we try to go out there and actually secure the border ourselves, whether it's the buoys or border force or what have you, you have the administration coming in trying to kneecap us. Just back up a little bit and just tell me from your contacts and your sources and all that, what is is it just like a massive exhale of relief that for, finally, at least for the next 4 years, they're going to have a real partner in the federal government doing their job and helping Texas secure the border?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We already have laws telling us how we can and should secure the border. And Texas was simply just saying, all right, we'll follow the laws. And our own president was weaponizing his justice system to sue us every time we tried to do that, which we all took a role in trying to combat against that. But we are so excited to finally not be in the fight alone. Obviously, other states donated resources, guardsmen, troopers. We're so grateful for that. But Texas has done more than any other state. Texas has made this monumental pivot into something that no other state has done as far as state sovereignty and security. And we must absolutely continue to maintain that very permanent role that we will have. Borders are Tom Homan. Trump himself, after his inauguration, had like a 10-minute back and forth with Governor Abbott in the Capitol. Everybody recognizes the work that Texas has done, and we're certainly going to maintain that position and that posture that we have on the border. I'm always getting asked, oh, so are y'all just going to take your troopers off? Are you taking your guards? No. We have done the work. We have learned more about cartels than the federal government has in the last 4 years because they've evolved rapidly in 4 years, thanks to our own administration allowing them to. So we're not backing down. We're not giving up. More buoys were put in the Rio Grande this week. We're going to continue to use our resources as necessary, but we're not doing that alone anymore. And yes, it's a huge sigh of relief.
But to Brian's point, I mean, you said our resources as necessary. Is it going to require $6 billion a biennium, or might Texans actually recoup some of that money, or will we actually see maybe our involvement on the border is at a similar clip, but in a different deployment? Maybe on more of the intelligence side rather than how many troopers can we get on the border, because now we can actually put in some form of barrier.
Yeah, well, think of it. All of the money that has gone to any sort of border security in the last 4 years has been from the state of Texas. Most of the people that Trump has surrounded himself with and his cabinet and his advisors have all publicly said Texas should get paid back every cent. And that's not the first time Texas would be reimbursed by the federal government for border security. There's documents back to 1860, 1890, 1905 where they're saying we're reimbursing the state of Texas for their role in the defense of the frontier against Indian invaders. And I think it was up to like $390,000 at that point or something. But it's not something new. When a state does something the federal government should be doing, we should probably get reimbursed for that. So it's yet to be determined if that's actually going to happen, because that has to come from Congress. And Congress do what Congress do.
I mean, look, on the bright side, they're like, oh, well, I don't know, that's a lot of money now. And I'm like, well, just sell a couple more Hunter Biden paintings and we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, we can definitely reallocate those resources as necessary. We're not just going to completely take the resources away. We can have the opportunity now with a friendly government, but we're not going to have President Trump in 4 years. Who knows what we're going to have in 4 years? So we have to maintain that posture so that when we do need to vamp up to such a high extent again, we're ready to.
Now that President Biden's, national nightmare is over, his reign of error is finally over.
Did you come up with that?
No.
I love that.
As much as I'm on social media,
that's why he has his job.
Yes, absolutely. You're all allowed to use that too. So the reign of error is officially over. So now we can look at everything that Biden did from beginning to end. And I'm just thinking about this and preparing for the interview, and just thinking like, We talk a lot about, what caused all of this. What caused, so anywhere upwards of 9 to 11 million illegals over that 4-year period of time. And granted, not, during the Trump administration, things were better, but it was, 60 or 70,000 a month, or maybe even a couple 100,000 in the really bad times. But during the Biden administration, it was millions and millions of illegals coming across. Do you think anybody will ever be able to account for all of the decisions or which ones were the worst of all that led to just an absolute flooding of the border in such a small amount of time?
Yeah, no, that's definitely something we need to be thinking about. And there's tons of historical analysis you can look at to get there. But really what it comes down to is when you have a nation as great as the United States saying, if you come, you're in. That's exactly what we did. We enacted catch and release policies. We did mass notices to appear, as I call a notice to disappear, because we have no idea where they went and their court dates are, years out. And that just tells people all over the world, hey, we can go. How do we get there? Cartels, that's their role, right? They saw it as a huge profit, and they have profited billions of dollars.
Catch and release is just free money.
Right. On just bringing human beings across the border and the many horrible ways that they do that. But that's what it comes down to. We had policies that said if you come, you stay. So people have to find a way to get here. And almost every single time that means they have to pay the cartels to do so. So the cartels look for every single way that they can to funnel people into the United States. And we were just letting them do it. We pulled everybody who was in charge of border security away from that role and said, just mass release them. Find the quickest and most efficient ways to let everybody in. It doesn't matter who they are. We can't properly identify them, but they're staying. And that's why you have mass deportation now, because we just have more people here now. But that was pretty interesting when you're looking at all of the executive orders that were signed. All of them were wonderful, but a lot of them are saying this is law. I mandate the Department of Homeland Security has to follow the law. By
the way, the Constitution has an opinion about that, about them having to execute the law, faithfully execute the law.
Yeah, so it's really just empowering us to do what we should be doing anyway, that we just haven't done for so long.
But what about in the other? I know Trump said he was going to reinstate the things that were working, things like the Remain in Mexico policy and trying to do some asylum reforms. But is there anything? To your point, a lot of the EOs are just start enforcing the law. Is there anything new? Is there anything that they came up with during the transition that may even take us to the next level, take us to the next step?
Yeah, there's a few key things. Two we already discussed. You have your foreign terror organization designation, and then you have the mandate on the Department of Defense to secure the border. And then following that, we've been talking for how long here about invasion. We have research, we have all of our podcasts where we're saying this is an invasion. They declared an invasion. And then on top of that, they had another EO supporting that saying states have the right to defend themselves in this said invasion. So it was just like they kept building upon this toolbox of everything we've been begging for. But what's so interesting that I noticed is we're getting all of these great things that we've been advocating for and doing the research on, and we finally got it. But it's like in one day, with one stroke of a pen, we finally have all these things. That's how easy it was for President Biden with one stroke of a pen to take all of those things away. So we really have to be prepared. This is wonderful. We can be grateful. We can't be complacent, right? Everybody in the United States, we cannot get complacent. There's still so much work to do, but we have to be ready for what's that next stroke of a pen in 4 years.
Are we hopeful then? Maybe Derek, jump in on this one. Are we hopeful? Are there ways that they can, lock those kinds of policies in? To her point, if Trump can do it with a pen, then the next guy can do away with it with a pen.
Now, there's this little known secret in Congress. Now, a lot of people don't understand. Now, there was a song back in the 70s called "I'm Just a Bill" that kind of really lets people into this Gnostic knowledge.
Thanks. Now it's going to be stuck in my head all day.
Yeah. I was going to say maybe Jefferson can do like the 2-panel with like me on one side and the bill on Capitol Hill on the other.
Yeah, Colin at least do a clip on Instagram of that.
Fair enough. I would say pretty soon you'll be able to like use AI to animate me talking as the bill. No, I say that all just to be silly, but like so much of this, given some of the polling that you've done here in the state of Texas and has been mirrored, elsewhere throughout the country, some of this would be such common sense legislation. Everyone tries to make so much about divisiveness in Congress, but if you look at it now, you got senators taking vote. You got the Senate not only putting it on the floor, the Lake and Riley Act, but actually voting for it. And so, that coalition being spearheaded a lot by some of the folks who are in the southern part of the country, let's say. Because this is becoming the open border itself is not a tenable issue, and nobody wants to own it. Much like Biden didn't want to own it during the last 4 years. they don't want to own it as a political liability, which if November has taught us anything, it most certainly is.
Or Kamala's border czar. What border czar? Who are you talking to?
Speaking of border czars, Texas's border czar. Mike Banks.
Yeah, tell us about, I was going to go with Tom Homan, but yeah, Mike Banks. Tell us where he's at now.
Texas has exported every great idea we've ever had as far as border security to Washington,
This is a pretty good 2 days for Texas.
Yeah, as much as I want to keep all of that talent here, that we have CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott, who left our team to go do that. You have Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks, who is the first Texas border czar. You have Tom Homan, who's like the U.S. border czar. And I promise you, he will not ask, who named me border czar? Yeah. He will not back down from that challenge, as we've seen. So we've got such a wonderful team assembled up there. Today I learned that the DEA new supervisor is going to be Derek Maltz, who is another part of our former Border Security Coalition. So we have really done all of this work, and it has not been for nothing, because all of those people are going to continue everything we started in Texas, and they're going to show how Texas was the blueprint, and this is how we truly secure not just the border, but the entire nation.
One name you haven't mentioned who is not from Texas, though, is Kristi Noem, and she'll be the secretary of DHS. She'll be the boss of 3 out of the 4 guys you just mentioned. Have you looked much into her record? Have you evaluated kind of what her agenda might be? I know her agenda is what Trump says to do, and much of border security policy comes right from the White House. But in terms of what you researched and know about her, are you impressed? Are you looking forward to her?
Yeah,
leadership?
No, I mean, I don't see that she will be an obstacle or in the way of anything. She's really on board with all the things that we're trying to achieve when it comes to national security, border security, combating foreign terror organizations and transnational criminal organizations. I think we've got a great team up there, and I'm really excited to do all the work that needs to get done now.
So we talked about how feckless Congress is. So let's go to a not so feckless legislature, and that's the Texas legislature. They obviously can get a lot done, and we're coming into session. What items are you looking at? I mean, you've already said, look, Texas has led on this issue all through the Biden administration, and so now that we'll be sort of freed up to not have everybody stabbing us in the back anymore, what things should Texas really focus on that maybe they hadn't been able to because they were having to fight the Biden administration all the time? Can we supercharge this thing and keep it going?
My message to every person in the Texas legislature is the time to strike is now. We're not going to be fought at every corner. We're not going to be told to stand down by the federal government. If anything, we're empowered more than we have ever been by our federal government to do everything it takes to secure not just Texas, but the entire nation. We cannot back down, and I don't anticipate that this legislature is going to do that.
What are some things that we could do?
Yeah, so you've got the 287G agreements, which I mentioned. That's going to be a huge aspect of really cleaning up our communities, but also some type of a border force, which is what we saw last session. You had my team on a few times during the 88th session talking about this border force. There was HB 20. Now it looks like it's going to be some sort of a Texas Division of Homeland Security. That's fine. We want a long-standing permanent department or force, task force, whatever, that is specifically charged with everything border security, protecting our communities from the threats that we're facing in Mexico. And then some other things are strengthening our Texas military department. They have so many roles that they're trying to do, one of those being border security. So we have some bills that look at modernizing the department and strengthening it, reconstituting our Texas State Guard, which, we could have a whole separate podcast on that, and hopefully we do. But also helping the state target corrupt Mexican elites and officials operating Mexico, which the federal government has never done. So now it looks like they're going to. And then just really equipping the state to do everything it needs to do to take on this illegal immigration crisis that we've been facing, empowering law enforcement to track and report all illegal alien data, to get the immigration status of anyone they stop, detain, or arrest. There's so many things going into this, but we're definitely going to have a very busy 5 months ahead of us.
So what's the best, closing out here, we're going to get to our 10-minute drill here after this question. Hopefully you'll stay with us and be part of it because we have a lot of fun. What is the best it could hope for? 4 years, in politics is, several generations, but really it's not a lot of time. Particularly if, you're going to have lawsuits and all this, trying to fight every policy that Trump tries to put into action. But what do you think is a reasonable, the best that we could hope for after 4 years? What does the border look like? Where does Texas stand, and how successful has the administration been?
You're right. 4 years is not a lot of time. I hope that by the end of President Trump's term, we have a really good grasp on which agency and what personnel is going to be assigned to what task. What is DoD doing? That they have a very clear mission and a long-term, almost permanent mission, really, in what they'll be doing as far as the border itself. And the Department of Homeland Security empowers the Border Patrol agents. I mean, these guys have been decimated. I know so many Border Patrol agents, being that I'm from South Texas, who they really wanted to step up and do this important mission. And for the last 4 years, they have not been allowed to do that. And the agency has dwindled down so much. They need to be rebuilt up. They need to be empowered again, and they need a new role, a new command structure. And that's really what they're getting with this new administration. So really just seeing that all of the agencies that have any role to play in this have a very clear directive, and that they've taken everything that they need in they're enforcing that mission 100% in such a way that no matter who comes in after President Trump, that is set in stone and it will never go away. And I think Texas is going to play a huge part in leading that way.
Derek, one last crack at Selene. Any other questions?
One last crack at Selene. No,
I'm ready.
No, you've been fantastic. You've been great.
You clearly are. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say publicly that so much of the delta between even the previous Trump administration and the current one is due in no small part to the work you and your team put together. So I just want to make sure that we put out there in public that I actually praise Selene on something. So.
Hey, we'll have various shameless plug segments throughout the show. All right, well, stay with us. We've got a couple of we do a couple of different segments towards the end of the show, just kind of prepping everybody and seeing what else is going on out there in the world. Our first segment in the 10-minute drill is Survey Says. I want to kind of just tie a bow on the Joe Biden administration and kind of set up kind of where we are going into the Trump administration. So I looked at approval ratings, and this would be on January 19th, like literally the day before the inauguration. Approval ratings, Trump was at his highest ever, I think, 56% going into it, which is kind of shocking considering how divisive the elections are and kind of how divisive a figure he's been, at least according to the media. Biden down to 39%, and this was before the pardons.
Bingo.
Yeah, this is before the pardon, so I can only imagine that. And I guess it was the 19th, so the pardon stuff was kind of working its way through the media. But then, of course, the worst ones were his family members, and that was on the 20th. So I can only imagine where it's at right now. Harris just a tiny bit above that at 43%. J.D. Vance is only at 41%, but that's because not too many people have an opinion of him. He's actually has a plurality at 41-35. So people are just still, I mean, even though they had a whole presidential election, there's still a lot of Americans that don't have an opinion of J.D. Vance.
His positives are low, but his negatives are even lower.
Right, yeah. And then finally, our friends in Congress, 31%. They get the stink award, I guess, for having the lowest approval rating amongst some of our national politicians. And I'm actually a little shocked that it's even at 31%. Yeah. So, Derek, your take on these numbers.
Well, you know how people say that they don't like Congress, but they like their congressman. I'm surprised that Congress did worse than Biden, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. You know, but these aren't, I mean, I think, not to make anything too meta here, but I think if you look at the zeitgeist of like where we're at right now, obviously, you know, Trump won enthusiastically. It was this breath of fresh air that wasn't there under the kind of decrepit husk of the rump Biden administration. And then just sprinkling on I will never pardon Hunter. Boom, pardon. Mm-hmm. And then goes on to pardon the rest of his family, which kind of raises more questions than I think it answers.
Right.
Not that I'm one who would ever say Biden crime family, unironically.
Well, what about the pre-pardons?
Yeah, but that's another thing though. It's you pardon like unknown criminal behavior. That's really, I would say, especially when you consider the extent of immunity that many of these folks have within the course of their J job to begin with. Why was that even necessary? And the usual people that are red shirt, blue shirt online. If you're in a red shirt, you're like, oh well, that's obviously corrupt Joe Biden doing this, that, and the other. If you're on blue shirt, it's like, oh, well, because Trump was going to come in and persecute his political prisoners or his political enemies. And then but if you're just like a normie, you're just like, what the hell's going on here? You're asking, why are people actually getting these pardons? Especially the fact that, Dr. Fauci was pardoned back to 2014. What was going on in 2014? Now, like I said, I was not one of these ones like, well, we need to, go, drag him out of town. But I was like, now I have questions.
Yeah.
Now I have plenty of questions. So yeah, I think this is kind of just a reflection of what I think, and I don't think it's even close. And if anything ever cemented it for me, it was Monday, is what I think will be widely considered the worst presidency of all time. And to be honest with you, yes, that is including Wilson. That is included the early years of FDR. I may say what you will about Franklin Pierce, but all that to say is I think this administration, people like to say, oh, well, they never regained their footing after the Afghanistan withdrawal. No, the thing is they were a bunch of screw-ups, and every chance they had an opportunity to demonstrate that, they stood and delivered, and I think that people are starting to get sick of it.
Noted presidential historian Selene Rodriguez, do you agree with Derek's contention that people will realize soon, if not already, that this was the worst presidential administration in our recent history?
Oh, from a security aspect, absolutely. We're facing the greatest national security crisis since 2011, and now it shows you that terrorism looks very different over time. But I do want to know, I don't think he pardoned Alejandro Mayorkas.
Hey, opportunity.
You see that? We're happy warriors.
If he had been impeached, maybe that would have cleared things. But
my favorite meme of all of this has been the goose chasing. Like, what did he need the pardon for? Love it.
All right, switching gears a little bit. Although all of us are parents, and so public schools and schools in general education is a very important issue to us. Our next segment is Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics, where we evaluate some new research that's out there. Most of the time it's ours, and it's a shameless plug again, but not this time. The National Center for Education Statistics has put out annual data. And so over last year, I think this might shock some people, although a lot of people that have been doing the research have realized that there's costs exploding in public education. And a lot of the reason for that cost has been administration, superintendent salaries, these
swimming pools
that don't, with no swim team, those kinds of things.
But that was voted on by the voters.
Yeah. All 15 of them that showed up to the election.
There you go, James.
Midnight on a Sunday. But according to new data released by the National Center for Education Statistics, public schools nationally have added 121,000 employees, while at the same time they have lost 110,000 students. So the administration, employees have gone up 121,000, while the number of students that they serve has gone down 110,000. Despite all, this is their report, despite all the continued attention to supposed teacher shortages, which I don't know, I don't have kids in school yet, so maybe this is something in your kids' schools. Supposed teacher shortages, the truth is that schools employ more educators than ever. At the same time, that student enrollment fell by 1.3 million over the last 5 years. Schools have added the equivalent of 55,000 teachers. So over the last 5 years, they've lost 1.3 million students, but added 55,000 teachers. You have 3 small children?
2 in school, yeah.
Two in school. How do you react to that?
My school, we don't have a lot of the lack of teachers, but we do have a lot of teacher turnover very quickly, which has been an issue for us. But look, a lot of people say, oh, well, schools are way better than they were when they were like little wooden shacks by a river.
Excuse me?
Kids actually learned in those little wooden shacks, and they had one teacher in ages 5 through 18 in some of those classrooms. So I think we just really need to be empowering good teachers and not trying to bring in more teachers, because that really hasn't proven to do anything. That
just the opening to Little House on the Prairie just like flashed through my head.
Yeah. Or Celine's in there teaching kids how to read.
Yeah. School mom.
She's in there improving the NAAP scores. Allow me to yes and what Selene was saying, because I think that in a lot of things what drives this is, you're going to have some mandatory growth, especially like in special needs where like ratios are promulgated, right? But like the problem is, I think, is the focus on, say, ratios as opposed to who's the more successful teacher. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, the absolute best teacher in the world, that ratio, give them 120 kids in their class. 'Cause, hey, I've had 120 student lecture halls. That's not easy, and it's not really a way to get foundational knowledge across. But the fact that they are adding these spots and the enrollment is going down says they're at least being slipshod with how they're applying them, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not actually focusing on the growth areas. What I think we're actually seeing is, we're talking about these ISDs that hire like idiot golf coaches who just fight with James online all day. as opposed to doing whatever their phony baloney job is. And those are the kind of things that take away from that deep learning in the classroom. Yet they still will go ahead and advocate for that. Granted, I probably could use a golf coach, but that's a whole other thing. That being said, I think
as long as the taxpayer's not paying for it, because that would be a complete waste of money.
Oh, I was about to say, I don't even know how you would actually have an efficiency audit of that.
Show them the video.
Yeah, we spent $50,000 a year, and his slice is now only 10 degrees instead of 15.
It's got worse, actually.
Well, with me, it probably would. But yeah, all that to say is, the biggest problem in public school spending is that it's not that there's no accountability, and in fact, like transparency and oversight, those are other standalone issues, but that's not the core issue. The core issue is the lack of, or the mission drift, and the lack of focus on what the primary purpose of public education always was thought to be. It was never thought to be something, let's empower the teachers unions, let's empower these local cartel interests. When I say cartel, I mean cartel like in the economic sense, not the cartels we just unless you got something that I don't know.
Hey, I keep my secrets straight.
Okay. I was about to say that'd be a hell of a breaking news. But that's all that to say is, again, they're not focused on the right things time and time again, and hopefully, obviously, we're seeing a lot of leadership from the top down under the current administration, ripping out the DEI programs and whatnot. But if we can just get the districts and whatnot to focus on that here in Texas, I think we'll see similar success.
And that's why I think there's an effort to educate people about what the money's being spent on, because I think for so long everybody just sort of equates, everybody who's taking care of their 3 kids or whatever, they just sort of equate like more money means better education, more money means we can get better teachers, or we can get better facilities, or we can get better programs, or whatever it is for my kids. And as we're seeing, there's so much money coming into the system, and yet very few dollars are actually going to what actually matters in the classroom.
Absolutely.
And not just are they, not going to the right things in the classroom, but then the whole culture of education is very anti-parent, and they don't want parents, knowing what's going on in the classroom. And when you try to find out, there's a lot of pushback. And so we just, there's a lot of big issues, and I think this is one that just kind of scratches the surface, which is, what are we spending all this money on? And this is kind of one data point in that, which is it looks like it's just kind of a jobs program at this point, which a lot of argument people
well, much like the progressive worldview had a very bad November, I'm pretty sure that particular worldview that you just described is about to have a pretty bad January through May.
All right. Well, let's end on a positive note. Let's jump into our last segment, what to watch for, what's coming up on your plate, there's a lot going on. We've got session starting. We've got the governor's call and his state of the state. We've got what's going to happen in Washington, D.C. We've already had a whirlwind of 48 hours of policies and executive orders. So, Derek, we'll start with you, at least over the next week or so. What are you watching for?
Well, one of the I was hoping going into this, and I was planning this morning with your what to watch for, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see these initial drafts of the budget. Well, they're here.
There you go.
I mean, they're
Nerd.
Fair criticism.
That's like 80% of of our audience.
Yeah,
so you just literally insulted.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not going to have any Cinderella problem. That foot's going right in that shoe. But yeah, so I obviously have to, we've all read the press releases in which, the devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. So I'm really looking forward to delving into that. Again, I know I said this last week, but a big thing that I think is going to really set the orientation for the chamber is going to be the committee assignments in the House. And I've heard tell that that's going to be something that's coming relatively soon, perhaps earlier on in the year than we have appreciated in the past. So if that turns out to be, that signals that there's obviously a lot of diligent thought going into this on the front end, which I think will basically reap dividends on the back end.
I'm looking up to D.C. at the Trump cabinet confirmations, which the transition has gone smoother than any transition, at least I've been paying attention to in the last 25 years or so. Very, very smooth. And despite kind of the scalps that they're trying to get with Pete Hegseth, I think every one of the other hearings have gone swimmingly well. I think they've shown tremendous competence and understanding of not just the solutions and the agenda, but really what the underlying problems are that the Americans are facing. And so kudos to everybody that works on that transition, all the work that goes into preparing those folks to go up there and give the right answers, but give substantive answers so the American people kind of know what to expect. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that our former colleague, our former president here at TPPF, has been nominated to be the Secretary of Agriculture, and I believe her confirmation hearing will be Friday. Is that what I'm hearing?
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay, so today's
believe
Wednesday.
I believe Thursday at 9 Eastern is when it starts, if I recall.
And with all due respect to Rubio getting a 99-0, that's totally unfair. That he's
those are rookie numbers. We got to get those numbers up.
Yeah, I actually think Brooke may actually challenge that, just because all the stuff that we've been reading, it sounds like she's been charming everybody up in D.C., but she's also going to do a fantastic job.
101 votes. We'll do it
as Ag Secretary. All right, so we will give our guests the last word. What are you watching for over the next couple weeks?
I am just excited to see Texas finally have the opportunity to work with our government to pass strong laws and to see the U.S. government codify a lot of the executive orders that President Trump has signed. Like I said, we can be happy, we can be excited, but we can't be complacent. So we need to make sure that everything we're doing is longstanding, regardless of who we have in office. I'm ready to get that work done.
Awesome. Well, Selene, thank you for being here. I know this is such a hot issue. Thank you. And I know you're super busy. You're doing other media. So thank you so much for taking time to explain it to our guests.
Hey, anything for you guys.
All right. And thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. Of course, you can always get us online. I'm on social media probably way too much. Derek, not as much, but you can definitely troll him and harass him on social media as
Thanks.
well. Celine's getting better at it. She's posting a lot, and so if you want to find Selene, you can find her on social media as well. And I'm sure ask questions and
I'd love to
pitch
engage
some research
on X.
All right, so there you have it. She will engage with the trolls on X. So thank you.
Wait, you're saying all of our listeners are trolls? Is that what you're getting at?
No, well, for the ones out there. Yeah, I mean, you're going to engage with trolls. It's not our audience, but once you get out there and start posting things, they're going to call you racist and all these other things that Derek and I deal with. But nevertheless, again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, do good and risk the consequences. We'll see you next time.